Welcome to Made for More podcast, where faith and personal growth converge. I'm Julia, and I'm honored to guide you on a journey of empowerment and transformation alongside our occasional co-host, Omar. We are passionate believers and advocates for unlocking your God-given full potential. Join us as we explore the intersection of faith, life, business, and relationships, igniting a fire within to embrace the truth that your life is destined for greatness. Together, we'll uncover strategies, insights, and stories that inspire and equip you to become the best version of yourself. Get ready to embark on a fulfilling quest towards personal and professional fulfillment, guided by faith and the unwavering belief that you, my friend, are made for more. Hey, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Julia Keeps It Real. And I have with me my friend Victoria. She has her own podcast as well, and she has such a beautiful light. I do not even know why the Lord blessed me with her and her friendship, but I'm so honored that we met and connected online, and I cannot wait for her to share her light with you guys and bless you guys today with some of her goodness so you guys can connect with her too. So Tori, tell us a little bit about you before we get going, and then tell us about your podcast too before we get going too, and then we'll talk about all the good things that we have to share.
Yeah. So, really, what is Truth Talks with Tor? I ask myself that like every day, because, when God gave it to me, he was like, Truth Talks with Tor. And I think for me, I'm coming from a place of feeling like I've been muted my whole life by those around me, those closest to me. And so really I am just on a mission to make heaven more crowded and to push religion down. And I know that that's like some people are gonna be like, all right, I'm out, I don't listen to this podcast. Yeah, but it's the truth, because I think you have to get to that vulnerable place and that place of authenticity to where God can use you. So I am like fired up, fresh off of like a revival. And I have a hunger inside of me because I know that I'm called to help women become unmuted and soar in the ways of the Lord. And, it's crazy, Julia, because your podcast is about keeping it real and mine is about speaking your truth, because there's power in your story. And a lot of people overlook that. They're like, what do you mean that I went through that for somebody that I might meet in the world? And so God really has helped me to come out of hiding, to come out of the shadows that other people have put me in, to come out of the labels that other people have put me in. And he's helped me to really see that I can pull those off, because the same power that rose Jesus from the dead is alive in me, and it's alive in you. And so really, y'all, what does it mean to be truthful with ourselves? Like, what does it mean to look in the mirror and be proud of who you are? What does it mean to have truth in your life? And so God really has me. And this past week, I've been preparing for this podcast. I'm like, God, what would you have me to say? And he's like, speak your truth. And, so I do this, Truth Talks with Tor. I have my podcast. And this past week I launched one about Dave Hollis, because he had a huge impact on my career as a podcaster, now YouTuber. And I thought, God, I don't want to jump into the content train of, let me post about Dave because it's trending, let me post about it because everybody's posting about it. But God said, this is your truth. Remember that I called you to speak your truth. And I was like, okay, God. So really, speak from what's helped you to get to where you are and never forget what you came from. So good. And so I'm like, okay. So yeah, I launched my YouTube channel the other day, just out of the blue.
Congratulations.
It's so, I'm like, Lord, okay, and so however God wants to use it, he'll use it. And, when you start to see his hand in everything and you expect to see his hand in everything, there it is. Yeah. And so he'll connect the dots. And so, yeah, I just, I speak from that place of truth, and it's taken me, gosh, years to get here. But I'm glad that I've arrived. I've never fully arrived, but I'm on the journey to arrive.
Right. And what I love about you is that whenever you even say the truth, you're talking about biblical truth. Like you tie things back to biblical truth. So that it is true. It's not just like, and then it's true for you and your testimony too. Like you share like what's true in your lens of life. But I've noticed you do a lot of biblical truths whenever you do your lives and you share on your podcast. I did see that you posted about Dave Hollis, and he impacted my life too with his inspirations. I'm going to listen to that episode that you posted. And then something else you mentioned with, even like my Keep It Real, and then your, Tori Truth Talks with Tori, is the power in your story. And I literally just told somebody last week that's interested in going into the direction of whether it's podcasting or posting things on YouTube and things, about sometimes if you're not really sure like who are you talking to and what audience you're serving, it's a lot of times, like you mentioned, the last version of you, like the stories and your life journey, sharing that there's power in it, because somebody either needs to hear it, somebody could probably be like, I didn't know somebody else is struggling with that too. And so I just love that you honestly have been a blessing, because I guess it was like my free masterclass thing. And then somebody sharing that, right? And then here you come out of nowhere like, hey, and I'm like, who's this cool chick? And then from then on, I've just seen you boldly share your truths and stories and light. And then that just makes people connect with you. And then if you just so happen to be in business, or if you just so happen to do, Tori does virtual assistant work and things like that. I mean, then that just makes people want to do business with you. But obviously, even more so with that, like life with you, like you want to be around people that are like that. And so I was like, yeah, I'm forever going to be connected to this girl, because she's amazing and I love her light and her energy. So yeah, tell us maybe like, where are you from? What else you got going on in your life over there? And, like you mentioned, like you're happy that you got to this place, but maybe a little backstory. We were talking side note before Victoria shares that. We were doing a little behind the scenes chat, and I did not know that your dad was a pastor until you said that today, but I should have known. But just give us, a little bit more backstory.
So my dad's a pastor, but kicker, me and my dad do not have a relationship.
Okay.
And so I grew up in the church, and so it's always been in like my DNA, like it's to the core of my being. But what I tell people all the time is that I knew God, like the seeds had been planted, but I had to come to know God for myself, because it was like when my dad would preach on something and I would kind of give my takeaways, because I'm a girl who I have a million notebooks. And so I would always take notes, and then I was like, Dad, I really feel like God said this during your sermon, or I really feel like we should do this at the church. And it was kind of like my dad didn't want to use me, but he wanted to use everybody else. And so I finally got to the point, like, I remember my dad and mom, when they divorced, I was in elementary school, and I'll never forget, I kind of acted out, like I kind of rebelled, because I thought it was me. Like, I don't know how many people can relate to that, but it's like, oh man, what did I do? Like, and so I went into protective mode, because I do have a sister, Sierra. And so I went into protective mode, and every time my parents would fight, every time they would be ugly towards each other, I was like, Sierra, let's go play Barbies, or let's go outside, jump on a trampoline. And it's like those parts of my story, God is like, you still need to hold on to, because that's who shaped you into who you are today. And you were talking about my lens of life. Like, there's parts of my story that I feel like God has gave me spiritual amnesia, and so I don't remember those. But the key points that have helped my character, I remember. So my parents divorced, and I'll never forget seeing their house be foreclosed on, and, seeing my dad's truck be repossessed. And, we had a dog, Molly, and my dad got to the point where he couldn't afford dog food. So he gave her Chef Boyardee. That's how we fed our dog.
Wow.
And, it's like, you would think that my dad would want to have a relationship with me, being that I was at his rock bottom with him. And that I'm so much like my dad, like literally I look like my dad. But God had to close that door, because when my dad got remarried, it hit me hard, because everybody wants their mama Barbie and Ken to be together.
Yeah.
And, that was house for me. Like, that was my comfort and my safe place with both my parents. But, through middle school, it got really hard for me. And I was bullied in school, bullied from elementary school up until time I graduated. My dad just stopped having anything to do with me in middle school. And I was like, okay, God, I know that you're here. I know that, you have a calling for me. And so I'm just going to put my head down. But I remember having the days where like my bags were packed and I was like, Daddy, can I go home with you today? No, sorry, we drove the smaller car. Or no, sorry, we've got plans with Sierra. And I'll never forget how that made me feel.
Yeah.
And, crying out to my mom, like, there's no good in me. Like, he doesn't love me. Because your dad is supposed to be the role model of who you're supposed to marry.
Yeah.
Or so we think.
Yeah.
So, high school came around. My dad still didn't want anything to do with me, but he wanted to be at my graduation. Of course he did.
Right.
So high school rolls around. I just so happened to stumble across an extra ticket, and I'm like, what does it hurt? Gave my dad the ticket, and he put up this big post about how he's always been there. I was 5 pounds, whatever ounces when I was born. And I'm like, dude, just forget it. Like,
yeah.
The thing is that I feel like we can all post pictures, but there's some of us who know the stories behind the pictures. Like, I didn't want to take a picture with him. I was like, dude, go on somewhere. But I think in those moments, it really has helped me to now kind of like fast forward and be where I am today. Because I can see how, when I became a mom, my son just turned 5 in February, and I know how not to parent because my dad showed me specifically how not to parent. And, I'll never not have time for my son. I'll never drive a smaller vehicle when I know I have a bigger vehicle in my garage at home. I'll never post highlights and pretend that I'm a great parent when I know that sometimes I struggle. And see, the thing is that you would have thought I would have learned from that in high school. But when I got pregnant with my son, I wanted my dad to be there. Like, I wanted him to magically change. Like, I wanted him to drink the magic potion.
Yep.
And God was like, Victoria, check your heart. And so I had my son. And then I told them specifically, I wrote out my birthing plan. I was like, do not let anybody that's my dad come into this hospital and pretend that we're good. Like, I wrote it out and I set those boundaries. And but I'm the person who, I'm a loyalist and I love hard. And I'm like, if he texts, if he calls, of course he can come in. But he didn't come around. He didn't try to come around. And I was hurt and I was confused, because I'm like, why would you not want to be a part of this?
Yeah.
And so, he got to a point where he was pretending to care just to kind of keep tabs on my mom, which I find is sick. And so me and Jackson went around him for a little while, and we quickly saw his agenda was to be the best Papa J in the world. And so finally I said enough is enough, and I drew back a lot. And I had saw, how manipulative he was, how he would pretend to care just so he could come around. And he's part of the reason that I'm still dealing with one situation in my life. And I have to remind myself, like, Victoria, it's not him, it's the spirit in him.
Mm.
And, you're nothing like your dad. And I thank God for that because, I'll always honor and respect him because the Bible says with that long life will be given to you. But
Yeah.
I have learned myself enough to know that I have established boundaries and that I don't have to fit a square peg into a circle hole because it just does not work. And last night on my live with Place of Prayer, I was talking about how, God has really, really helped me to realize that I am nothing like my parents. And I say that because it's the truth. Like, my parents are just a part of my story, but God broke the mold when he created Victoria.
Ooh,
And
girl.
I'm at that place now where God is just telling me, because Real Talk Kim is my pastor and mentor.
I was
And
gonna get to her. I was gonna
she's
get to her. Go
amazing.
for it. Love
She
it.
is, oh my gosh, she is like my best friend, with my role model, with my pastor, with my
Yeah.
leader.
Yeah.
And so, it was hard because I've always wanted my dad to be there. And I've always felt like I had to be the loudest in the room to be heard by my parents.
Mm.
And I tried that, Julia. Like, I tried to go out to sports I hated to get my dad's attention.
Yeah.
I tried to, Dad, come shoot basketball, or Dad,
Yeah.
come to Jackson's birthday party, or, Daddy, why don't you just meet with me? I tell you what happened in December. I emailed my dad and I just said, hey, I would like to get the girls something for Christmas because, when he got remarried, it tore my heart out. And I wasn't invited to the wedding. My sister knew about it. And so it really irritated me because I was like, why would you not want your daughter there? And
Right.
so his wife just doesn't like me. And I think it's just the spirit in me that
I bet it
agitates the
is.
demons in her.
Yeah. Seriously.
And so I'm like, okay. And then, they got married, and now when my dad and mom were married, they had a church. And then funny, you're going to crack up at this. My dad got remarried, and now him and his wife have a church. And it's like the same thing. And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
love you, Dad. But it's crazy because through Real Talk Kim's ministry, I have been able to go back to those places where I have been the most broke, where I have had to be the loudest in the room, where I'm able to make sense of it. Because here's the thing that I know to be true. And I know that if my dad ever listens to this podcast, that it's probably going to agitate his spirit. But I think that it's time that I do speak from that place, because I think that there's a lot of people who are parents, like their parents are pastoral, or they've been told to sit down, or they've been told, there's a devil in you. Far from. But, honestly, if my dad ever listens to this, this is all I would want him to know is, Dad, I tried until I was blue in the face, and the prophet wasn't welcome in his own hometown. And I'm sorry to tell you, but I'm not sorry to tell you that you broke me and it hurt. And I have had to go on a self-care, self-love journey.
Wow.
And I can't allow you and your wife and your family to keep making me feel that I have to beg for your attention. And honestly, Dad, it's because of you that I have found my rock solid foundation. And it's because of your no's that I'm able to make heaven more crowded. It's because of you disqualifying me that God qualified me. And it's because of you that I found my voice. And it's because of you that I found the truth, because the truth is God. And the truth is that, if you're playing church, then their blood's going to be on your hands. And I love you, Dad, and I'll always love you, but I can't be around you. And when God begins to continue to elevate me, please just stay away. Honestly.
Oh my goodness, Victoria, y'all have no idea. This is literally God working, because we did not plan for this, did we? No. We did not plan. We planned for talking about truth and talking about our story, but her just saying, well, my dad was a pastor. Like, I was like, oh, okay, I want to like talk about that. Did not know. You are a very strong individual. I have to tell you that, because I did not know that backstory of your life. So, wow. So to see the woman you are now, and to see what, I mean, I'm trying not to cry right now. So, because I get emotional just hearing other people's stories. So just to see the woman you are today, honestly, Tori, just to think about like you said, like the playing of church and being, a pastor that's living it, or I'm sure it's probably difficult to see, somebody go up there and say these things, but then living kind of a different life. I can only imagine how that feels. But you mentioned, so you were saying things, I was kind of writing some things down, because whenever you said setting those boundaries, and I know, and I wrote down like Real Talk Him, because I know that's a pastor that you follow, you love, it's your mentor, you connected with her, you're in the same like Georgia type kind of area. I know you had to drive a little bit to go see her in person, but I know you've been following her for a while. And when you mentioned set boundaries, it reminded me of her recent series, Kiss My Boundaries, and I was like, oh, we gotta talk about Real Talk Kim. So just maybe, just for like the people in the room that are listening, that are like, okay, I feel them, like, I want to speak my truth more. I want to maybe even grow more in my faith. I want to maybe even elevate myself in, in like how to serve others, and how to, make heaven more crowded. Like, what's that journey been like for you, and how can you help people that are trying to do a better job of that? And maybe share some inspiration with like your Real Talk Him journey, or however you want to tie that in, but just kind of like anyone that's kind of like, okay, I want to be like Tori and grow like that in my journey. How can I do that?
Well, where much is given, much is required, and much is expected.
Yes,
ma'am. So I know some of you are probably like, wow, I can't believe she just called her dad out on a podcast like that. But the thing is that God will never put more on you than you can bear, or more that you're able to carry. And once I really got to that point, I was like, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired of giving CPR to dead situations, sick and tired of beating this horse when I know it died, when my dad walked away, when my mom walked away. And, the crazy thing is that we want validation from our parents. And I got to that point to where I was like, I'm done. Like I'm done. I am 26 years old. I don't have to be the loudest in the room. And I think for me, it was getting to that point to where I was tired of being broken and bleeding out, and feeling like nobody could like hold me, or feeling like I couldn't get close to people because I was church hurt. And so it's crazy, because Real Talk Kim, man, that woman of God, I remember her days where she had a mohawk, and I'm going to share this podcast with her, so she's going to laugh at me. I remember when she had this mohawk, and she was going around in tutus, and she had heels on that were probably that thick. And I was like, what is she doing? But she was radical for God. And, hearing her backstory now, being in her mentorship program, so she has a church. It's in Limitless Church in Fayetteville, Georgia. And she also launched an Atlanta campus, so Atlanta, Georgia. And so I'm about 5.5 hours away from her. And it's crazy because I kept seeing her lives, her morning prayers. And then I would see her lives at night, and I was like, look at this boss chick with this mohawk hair leading people to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was drawn to, be a part of her ministry, but I watched from afar because I had known that, when you're so high in God that, some people don't make time for you. Like, there's some pastors, I don't want to talk to the congregation. I am going to walk me in, walk me out. I'm not taking any pictures. And my dad's one of those. Sorry, Daddy, but you are. And so when I got in her mentorship program, it was actually, so me and James will be together 3 years in October. And so I jumped into her mentorship program in 2020. And it was because I was tired of having panic attacks. I was tired of crying out. I was tired of getting hurt by people. I was tired of people would use my services and they would abuse me. They would try to tell me I'm not qualified. They would try to tell me, like, what are we paying you for? And it's really, they don't know how to communicate with me. And so I got into her mentorship program, and I'll never forget, I used to screen record where we were on live, like just like this, but she was talking to everybody. And she would be like, Victoria, that's a great comment. I love that you said that. And I was like, she saw my comment. Like,
Yeah.
I'm fangirling.
Yeah.
And so I kept being consistent with her lives. I would know Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, she'll go live in the RTK Inner Circle, which I highly, highly recommend. It is the best $20, 60 cents a day that you will invest in yourself, because she sends out devotionals. She goes live. There's a community of women in there to where, it's conversations like this that they're having, and they're talking about how God has used Real Talk Him. And so I highly recommend that, y'all. And, every 6 months we go to Limitless Church, and we have a 3-day revival with her. And so I joined her inner circle, and I was committed for a year. And then I was still going through leaps and bounds of becoming a leader. And I used to be the person, y'all, that I could not take constructive criticism for anything. It would shut me down. Like, I could have a full tank of gas and somebody say, Victoria, I don't think that that's right. Or I think you need to second guess not really second guess yourself, but kind of check your motives. And so I'll never forget, I left the inner circle for like a couple months. And then I saw that she was being ordained by Rod Parsley, which I grew up listening to him. And I was like, that is in Columbus, Ohio. I'm going.
Wow.
Like, I just felt God talking to me through that live stream. So, y'all, I hightailed it to Columbus, Ohio by myself. And I got into the room, and she was being ordained that weekend. And that woman, literally, out of everybody there, she's like, Victoria. And mind you, at this time, I'm not in her inner circle, like not paying the $20. And she's like, hey, girl. And at this time, she was going through a wig stage. And I was like, hey, PK, like, what's up? And she's like, how are you? Oh my gosh, like hugging all over me. And I knew then that God had called me to be under her covering, because, y'all, there are thousands upon thousands of people that watch her streams. There are thousands upon thousands in her mentorship program. But trust and believe that when you make yourself known and you are serving, because your purpose is connected to serving. And so that's how I got to where I am today. Of now, fast forward, I went to my first RTK Inner Circle retreat in January.
Yeah.
And I'm serving. I'm leading a connect group. I am, really plugged into that ministry, because the thing is that she doesn't need my $20 a month, but she needs my commitment into where I'm paying is where I'm going to take it seriously. And that's where I'm going to be active. Right. And so I actually heard from her this morning, and it made my whole morning. I could not go back to sleep, because she had talked about, because we had a death in the family last week. And it was hard on me because it was my grandpa's twin brother. And, you know, I honestly can say that his life, the life that he lived, has helped me to want to be so in sync with the heartbeat of God, because he had told us, you know, a couple weeks prior, God's taking me home. I don't want to be here when we have food shortages anymore. I want to go be with my bride of 58 years. And she's been gone 2 years now. And I was like, no, Joe, with long life, you shall live. You know, like I'm trying to quote all the scripture I know. And he's like, trust and believe, Victoria, that I'm going home. And I said, okay. And so today I was grieving. And I think that that's where so many of the listeners are going to get to, is like, you're grieving your past, and you're grieving that you allowed yourself to be so vulnerable in those situations. But I want to tell you that it's not your fault. Pastor Kim says it all the time. The pain is not your fault, but the healing is your responsibility. And you got to get to that point. You got to get connected to where you're being fed and where you're being heard and valued and loved, and get around a support system that will pull you out of the pit of hell, that will say, okay, process, marinate on it for 24 to 48 hours, log out of your social media apps, because no statement is required for where God is going to take several of us. And so I had to get to that point. So today I was writing a post on Facebook. No, it wasn't even Facebook, it was Instagram. And I was just kind of like writing out a letter to my Uncle Joe Bill. And I was like, you know, I miss you. I don't understand, but I want to tell you what I did. I want to tell you that I'm being active for God. I'm making heaven more crowded. I'm sharing how you were so in sync with the heartbeat of God. And, you know, if my time comes before the rapture, I want to be able to prepare the family the way you prepared us. And I was just writing to him. And Pastor Kim commented, and she said, I'm so proud of the powerful woman that you're becoming. And she just kept talking to me. And I was like, you know, she's on an airplane. She could be listening to anything else. She could be commenting on other people's posts. But the fact is that the people that God have for you are for you, and that they will know you by the fruit that you bring to the table. They'll know you by your spirit. And so to anyone out there who you feel like, man, you know, how do I step into that truth? It's about making sense of the puzzle, because I tell people all the time, life is one big puzzle. You can't fit a middle piece with an end piece. Like, you've got to get to the point to where you take a step back and you look at the puzzle and you're like, oh, so I went through daddy issues so that way I could parent better. I went through my parents walking away so that way I could be the best parent. I went through, you know, having my heart ripped out so I could deal with this. And so I think what it really takes to step into your truth is, one, allowing yourself to realize that it sucked. Yes, it sucked. What can I do better? How can I heal from this? Because a lot of people, Julia, they speak from their wounds. They don't speak from their scars. They can fall outside today and have a cherry on their knee, and then they come in and go live about it. And it's like, dude, yes, it hurts. Like, you're bleeding right now, but like Pastor Kim says, don't bleed on people who didn't cut you.
Yeah.
And so what I mean by that, y'all, is I want you to catch that spiritually. Is so many people, they're trying to get on Facebook and preach about something they just experienced. And it's like, take a step back, Sally, like process it, and then make sense of it. What does God's word say? If somebody says, you know, they give you a bad doctor's report, what does God's word say? It says that he will never put more on you than you can bear. It says that he is your healer. It says that he is your waymaker. It says that, you know, yes, this diagnosis sucks, but how can I flip the narrative of this season of my life and say, you know, yeah, they said I got 6 months to live. What am I going to do with that 6 months? How many people's lives am I going to impact? You know, maybe you're like, well, do I write a letter to my dad? Don't. Like, I tried that, but it was more of a flesh thing than, I mean, Pastor Kim has really helped me take a little bit of the hood out of my step, because I do sometimes still have that one foot on the south side of heaven, but
me too. It's okay.
if you know, have you heard her part of the story where she says that her ex, she would pray for God to kill him with a train, that
Yes,
even
I've heard her
Benny
say that before or something. I think I was listening to one of her podcasts recently where she said that. Yeah.
that was where I was with that letter to my dad. And I was just like, no, Victoria, this ain't the way to do it. You know how you do it? Pastor Kim says the way that you do it is you let your fruit outlive their lives, because people are going to talk whether it's the truth, whether it's not. And, let them talk, because haters, like she says, are confused fans. And guess what? They send people to your platform for them to see your truth. I went live before this podcast, and I was singing, I can't sing. But God had said, as long as you are a willing vessel that I can use, then I'm going to tell you to do impromptu lives. I'm going to tell you to interview these people. I'm going to tell you to do this and that. And the way that I found my truth is doing the things that scare me the most and doing the things that do make heaven more crowded. And your truth is going to be different from season to season. Right now, I'm in the season of helping people become unmuted so that way they soar in their truth. And you just got to find out what works for you. If it's hiring a mentor that's going to kick your butt every day, then I highly recommend Real Talk Kim. If it's someone who you need more of like business guidance or coaching, then I recommend Julia. If you need like, if you need a VA that's going to help you get the clutter out of your head and get it into content and run this year, then that's me. It's kind of like all starting to make sense to me now that I'm kind of like getting it all out, because I'm like, there are a lot of, pastors' kids that are unseen. There's a lot of women who want to do more.
Yeah. I love that. I love all of that. So what I kind of bullet pointed what you're saying whenever you're talking about ways to continue to grow in that space. Like you mentioned, if you're trying to make those next steps, you mentioned the Real Talk Inner Circle. Literally, it's been on my to-do list. I need to just do it. I just got to do it, right?
Just do it today.
I just got to do it. Get it done. Okay. Seriously, if it's not like right now, you got to hold me accountable, okay? Because I know you're going to come for me and be like, are you in it yet?
Are you on book club?
Yeah. So that's a great, and like she said, it's $20, and then all the community aspect. And I'm sitting here watching, one of like Tori's lives, and I see girls that are talking and chatting with her. She's like, oh, I know all these people from the inner circle. So you get community in there, which I think is always great for accountability. If you're not already connected into a church community group, or if you already are, it's just an added bonus. You're getting your devotionals, you're getting just those reminders with that. But if not, RTK, then some type of program, mentorship, a Bible plan. You could go to the Bible app. Those are also great. A devotional, I have plenty of those. In fact, I need to update, but I'm going to put on my own my link tree. I'll put my own like Amazon or whatever link of different devotionals that are my favorites for people to kind of follow and check out. So if that's helpful for you, I can do that for y'all. Another thing that Victoria mentioned was serving, right? How to grow more into the next step is to serve and figure out what works for you. She was talking about serving at the retreat, serving at the church. I mean, just getting that heart of service and serving others. And that's what we're called to do anyway. And then you will naturally see how God can use you whenever you do that. I think that's how I honestly started this podcast. It was not for any other reason. I was like, I'm not doing this for money purposes. I didn't even start talking about the coaching, wasn't even a part of my podcast idea. I knew I was in network marketing business, and so I wanted to serve people that way, but it literally was like a whisper of God of like, okay, I need you to start doing more for my kingdom. And so it was literally just something to serve. So however you want to do that. And it has grown after 3 years into all this, connecting me with more people, growing you just will be so shocked at when you just come from a servant place, what can happen with that. So I love that bullet you mentioned. Then you also mentioned healing. You mentioned people were speaking from wounds and not their scars. Like that in itself, meaning basically go heal yourself, right? Don't bleed on people. So find that support system and things like that. So I love all of what you mentioned. Just kind of to wrap things up a little bit, I kind of want to know, like, you have so much wisdom, even in your 20s. I can only imagine, like, if God blesses you with, double the life, triple the life, like where you're going to be. But, what would you say would be your best tip, word of wisdom, advice for life?
Well, I did want to say, so there's a Real Talk Kim app in the App Store. If you guys can't afford $20 a day, she sends out 3 notifications a day at 3:00. She'll tell you to drop your head. She's gonna be like, did you? I did. Drop your head and say a prayer, and she leads you through that. And then if you're ever up before 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, get on her morning prayer calls. Mm-hmm. I love it because she used to not be a morning person. And now she's 50 and running and living her best life and taking us on this healing journey. So I honor my pastor, and I look forward to telling her about how I've really advanced her career, because it was not even a career. She would do it if, she would just do it. Like, that's how she is. Right. So really, I would just say, give yourself grace as you're walking through this season, whatever it is. And, find your purpose. And there for a while, I didn't know what my purpose was. I knew that I wanted to serve people, and I knew that I wanted to go on this self-discoverment, self-healing journey. And, I think for so many of us that are listening, we're hungry for that next thing. And I was actually sharing this with Julia before we went live of, I have a hunger inside of me, but it's a hunger that, like, before this podcast, I shoved yogurt down my throat because I was hungry, but my stomach is still growling because I'm hungry for that next best thing. Like, I've never led a conference before. I've never, done that, but I know that those are coming. I know that God is connecting me with women who are going to be there, and who are going to speak. And, personal development is what you cling to. Your relationship with God is what you cling to, because when you hit rock bottom, you discover who the rock at the bottom is. And so I would just challenge you guys as you're going into this next season, 1, give yourself grace. 2, realize that sometimes life happens and that we can't control the circumstances. We can't control what we're going through, but we can control our perspective and how we allow it to feel in our lives. And, have that headstrong benefit and get selfish about your healing, because I am literally in real time, snoozing people on Facebook, and I have never felt more free. Like, I'm snoozing people from my past. Those people that hold me to my past, guess what? They're gone. And the thing is that I've realized I don't have to come off my chariot to throw tomatoes. Like, I'm selfish. I want to eat my Mater sandwiches because spring is coming around. So, and I mentioned this earlier, and I just feel like God wants me to remind someone out there, there is no statement required. You don't have to put up a post, I'm snoozing people for 30 days, or I'm going on this self-help, self-love journey.
I'm deleting all of my friends. If you're still here, you're one of the real ones.
Those posts agitate me so bad. And I'm like, there you go. Snooze. And guess what, guys? They're not going to know that they've been snoozed. They're not going to know.
I mean, they might. Like, I'm just going to let you know.
And like, it's so fun to do because it's like, boop, like, yeah. And I mean it in the, we were talking about Pastor Kim's series, Kiss My Boundaries. Like, I mean it in the most respectful way. And her new series, Julia, like, Prepare Yourself for Tomorrow, is from rags to riches.
Okay.
So I'm like, let me go about that. Like, I think that a lot of us were hungry for that next best thing, but we don't realize that that's us stepping into our power, that we have a choice in what role we play And, you know, if you guys look me up on Facebook or you look me up on Instagram or YouTube or my podcast, I am literally keeping it so truthful because you can't teach from those wounds. You have to teach from those scars because you have to allow them to heal. And, you know, your fruit will outlive their lies. Your story stops today with the victim mentality, and you've got to take on that victorious mentality of I am the head and not the tail. I am above only and not beneath. If God has called me to it, he will see me through it. And don't get stuck in a season or don't get stuck in a moment when you know God's called you to more. And, you know, whatever that looks like, network marketing, you know, starting a marketing business, you know, launching a book, joining the RTK inner circle, like take it a step at a time and be 1% better today than you were yesterday. Because when you put unfair expectations on yourself, guess what? When you fail, you're going to start doing that self-doubt, that self-esteem, like it's going to go woo. And you're like, come on now.
Right. Yeah. I love that. I love, I don't know if you've ever heard this song, Big by Pastor Mike is his name. Anyway, I'm obsessed with this song right now. And in the song, he says, take a look at yourself or take a picture of a selfie of your, I don't know, basically he says like, take a selfie because what you look like right now, you won't look like next year.
Yeah.
And it just reminds me of the growth. Like if you continue to grow, like you say, like that 1% more every day. And I see old posts, like one of my favorite things to do is to go back to my Facebook memories and be like, oh, especially like from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I'm like, who was I? Like, who is that person? But even just from like a year ago or 2 years ago to see that growth, or even listening, like I just had a moment where I listened to one of my own podcast episodes from 2 years ago. And I'm like, I can see the growth even like from 2 years ago when I was starting my podcast journey. So it's just really cool to see that if you continue to try to level up yourself and to be that 1% better, then you hopefully will see that growth every day. And I'm all about the snooze and the, what is it, unfollow, but actually like it's tricky. It's just like, wait, if you unfollow, then you try to follow back later, they see it. So the snooze is the best option because then they won't be notified. But yeah, I love that tip. Do what you need to do to protect your peace and your boundaries. And I think like setting up those boundaries are important. Family, friends, all of it, it has to happen sometimes. Literally, Victoria, this has been amazing. I want people to know how they can connect with you. So we have True Talks with Tori. You can obviously find it on podcasts, Apple Podcasts. I tell people all the time, just go to the good old Google and search it, and it's gonna play. Like it'll come up. And for people that are not like, you know, tech savvy with podcasts, but where else can people listen if it's not just on Apple Podcasts?
So True Talks with Tor is on Apple. It's on Spotify. I use Anchor to do my podcast. So anywhere that Anchor distributes, you guys can find me. And, you know, I started a YouTube channel. It's just Victoria Wagner. Don't forget the O, because if you forget the O, you won't find me.
Yes. And
you're, of course,
it's all going to be in the show notes too.
Yeah. And so I'm actually eligible for monthly subscribers on my podcast, which I've only had like 28 episodes, but like somehow God has made it to where people can subscribe and support me. And I'm like, okay, like, all right. And then of course, like Virtual Victories with Victoria on Facebook is my virtual assistant page. Really, if you guys have any questions, you know, you can email me at virtualvictorieswithvictoria@gmail.com. Yeah, I'm pumped. I'm fired up. I can honestly say that me showing up from this vulnerable place, more people are drawn to my page. And it's like I told them today on my live, like when you ask God to step into your story and to be the center of it all, like, won't he do it? Like, as soon as I get done with this podcast, I got to go run and change clothes and go through a drive-through somewhere because we have revival in the park today.
I love it.
And I just, wow, y'all. I want to leave you guys with this. Because Julia had asked me prior to this, what does success look like for me? And I think that for me, it's a strong willpower and knowing that God has my back. And I soak in personal development because success to me is living my life by design.
I love that. I love that.
So I'm just grateful.
No,
like,
I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful that, we have been connected and I stay connected. I don't know, you are such a light, like I've said many times. And so I will continue to connect with you in all of the ways that we can. And then you're going to hold me accountable to the inner circle. Seriously, I'm like, if I don't do it, I'm going to be off for spring break. So if I don't do it soon, you're going to be like, hey, I don't see you in here.
yes.
But yeah,
and you got to get in my connect group too.
I know. I got to. Like
Tuesday
Tuesdays, right? Tuesday night.
Look,
Okay.
we'll have a deadline. I'll give you till Tuesday, and then I'm gonna be like, Julia, it's Tuesday. Like, did you sign up for the inner circle? Because we're doing big things. I mean, we really are. And this past weekend, I actually signed up to sponsor a child in Africa, and his name is Theory.
Oh, I love it.
I felt God. Here's the crazy thing, y'all. Here's a God story to make y'all smile on the way out the door. So I had felt, God had told me, like, I was like, God, I know you have a theory to use me. And so at Winter Jam, the lights go dim and they're like, if you feel led to sponsor a kid, then, and I was like, okay, I'm going to sit here and ponder on this for a second. Cause you never want to make a rash decision, cause that's somebody's medical health,
right. Yep.
all of that. And so I was sitting there and God's like, you see that woman over there? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, she keeps walking by. And he's like, go to her. And I was like, oh, I gotta get up. But he's like, if you want change, you've got to move.
Yeah.
And I went over to her and I was like, hello, I would like to sponsor. And she's like, here you go. And I turned it around as I'm walking to my seat, and his name is Theory, Thierry. And I was
like, what are the odds? Yeah.
I was like, I see what you did.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is your child to sponsor. And he's like, oh, and by the way, this is not the only one that you're going to sponsor. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you. Because where much is given, much is required. So I think as long as you guys have a theory that God is going to use you, then he's going to give you those confirmations. And if you guys want to be inspired, you have 3 hours, which was supposed to be only a 45-minute live, but it was 3 hours last night. Go to my Facebook and watch the interview that I did with Place of Prayer, and just allow God to just come into your home and shift things, because you got to be hungry for change, or you're going to keep settling in insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over. So just as I'm holding Julia accountable, I'm holding all of you accountable of get out there and live your best life. You don't have to spend money to impress people that don't even like you. And just stay connected, y'all. That's what I'm gonna leave y'all with today.
Yes. Find some accountability, stay connected. I even have accountability, like we mentioned before, in your church community group. So I have, I purposely have somebody that I've known, like in education, that's a part of the church with me. I'm like, hey, when we're not showing up for, for grow groups, like hold me accountable. So that's so important. So anyway, I love you and I love you for being here. We pray that this episode blesses you guys, however, whatever parts you needed to hear today. And we hope that you take action. That's our hope and our prayer today. So thank you, Tori. I know you got to go and do your next thing, but we will chat soon.
That sounds good.